What's going on, everyone? I've got a follow-up video for you. So thanks to a clever thumbnail and a catching title, the video about my battery dying definitely captured a lot of attention, and with that, a lot of great questions. I realized there are some things in the video explaining what happened to the battery that I didn't really explain or get the chance to go into, and this is my chance to tackle those questions. I went through the video and all the comments and looked at the most common ones. There was definitely one question that stood out above all the rest as the most commonly asked question, which is also what I first asked Tesla when I was there to diagnose what was going on. But I'm going to take this video to go through that question and several others that are really good inquiries about what happened or what I might do next, or why I chose one option over another. And in looking at a lot of the comments, I have an idea that maybe I'll do another video, a follow-up to the follow-up, that maybe looks at more of the comical comments I saw, or nonsensical, or I don't know, maybe some FUD derived, or just kind of like have fun with some of the ridiculous things that were said. Let me know what you guys think of that down in the comments. I feel like that could be a fun time. And also keep your eyes out for another video like this that's actually going to go over my total, like my true cost of ownership, including all of the expenditures. It's been highlighted that in my explanation looking at the maintenance costs, it didn't go over my true costs, like all of my charging, insurance, registration, everything. So I'm actually going to make a dedicated video about that. I've wanted to do that for a long time, and given I still don't have my car back, it's estimated to be finished on the 25th, but I feel like it's very optimistic considering that's 3 days away, plus holidays. Not counting on it. Well, I figured in the meantime, I can go ahead and tackle those video ideas. Alright, so the first question, and by far the most common one in all of the comments, was around the battery itself, whether or not I could upgrade to an LFP or a long-range battery. Now, this was literally one of the first things I asked when we realized that a battery change was necessary. I looked right at the service technician and said, hey, what are the chances I can get an LFP pack thrown in, or one of those 82 kilowatt long-range packs? And he laughed it off, saying, man, I wish that was possible. So when it comes to especially the LFP battery, it's a completely different design, which means different wiring harnesses, different mounting points, different programming. It's not compatible with the standard range plus that I have. And same goes for the dual motor battery that is put in all of the long range cars. My car was built and designed around the 50 kilowatt hour smaller pack with the single motor, and there's no way for them to retrofit a bigger pack or to change it. I mean, the amount of work that would go into effectively redesigning my undercarriage, wiring harness locations, mounting points to consider the two different motors, it wasn't an option. If it was, I would have taken an LFP pack, no problem, because with the lithium ferrous phosphate, LFP, lithium iron phosphate, another way of saying it, the cycle life count's way higher. That's one of the reasons that you can charge up to 100% without really worrying about it, is because it has the ability to handle that energy transfer a lot better than the nickel manganese cadmium packs. So to answer a follow-up question that was kind of built into the battery upgrade question, yes, the LFP and the long-range packs would go a lot longer than mine did, given the same use. For the LFP, it's due to its ability to have a lot more cycle life use. And for the long-range pack, it's the fact that you would do this same amount of driving but less charging because you're getting farther in between charges. So it's kind of a logical path to follow. If you go farther for less charging and you just factor that the long range pack will fail at the same number of charging cycles as the 50 kilowatt short range pack, then it would just make sense that you would get maybe 300,000-400,000 miles, 600,000-700,000 kilometers out of it. That is some speculation. I don't know. I kind of wish I had a long-range pack to beat to hell and test that way. So if any of you do and are up for the expensive experiment, go for it. Let's see what numbers we figure out. Now, a question that kind of followed in a pretty similar fashion to this was, what were my own charging habits? And I realized I didn't really explain this in the video. Those who have followed me for a long time with understanding my knowledge of Tesla would probably assume that my charging habits are pretty good. And they are. I've never charged to 100%. I typically capped my car at 90. Occasionally, if I'm trying to scarf down some food or something, it might get to 92 or 93, but never 100%, and typically didn't let the vehicle go below 10% on the other side. There are one or two outliers, 0.1% of the time where I've had to stretch things out circumstantially, and I come down much lower than you would want to. But in the overall scheme of 140,000 miles or over 225,000 kilometers, I mean, the amount of times that I took it below 10%, 0.05%, 0.01%, like almost none, just to get that point across. Charging habits were A1. You know, I had this, I would tell most people the 15 to 85 rule as a good place to keep your vehicle above and below to maintain good battery health as far as degradation. So the only way I could have improved this is with home charging. And that was another question that I got quite a bit was, you know, around my own charging habits, you know, that I should charge at home or sometimes. And yeah, I would, guys. I totally would if I had that option. This house, there's no driveway. We've got a grass yard out in front and street parking only. It's just, it is what it is. In one vein, it's kind of like first world problems, big deal. But in this specific circumstance, it's a pretty big inconvenience because of how heavy the usage on my battery is. So if I could charge at home, I would. The plan is for us both to eventually be in a place where we can, but for now, we effectively use supercharging stations like you would use a gas station. It's the only option we have. It is what it is. Can't get around it. That being said, when I get the new battery pack, I do plan to be even a bit more strict on my charging habits, trying to avoid going too far below 20% and too far above 80. In that vein, though, there's another question that I saw a lot of, which is that, you know, people have insert person here, a friend, family member, whatever, that they know that it drove a lot longer than I did, and their battery's still fine and going strong. They're not having these same issues. I saw that comment a lot, and again, that hammers in the fact that I literally 100% of the time, not even once, did I AC charge or charge at home. It was all supercharging. I don't know of anybody else that does that. I mean, I'm sure there's maybe one or two, but they're not driving like I am. Not to the best of my knowledge. If any of you do, let me know. But most of you that know somebody who has a vehicle that's gone forever, you know, these Teslas that have gone well over 800, 900,000 kilometers, they still charge at home. Maybe not all the time, but probably overnight, that thing's charging at home. And that does wonders for the battery health. You know, and that information came straight from Tesla to me, that even if I could just charge at home overnight, that would do so much good for the battery that it would have gone a lot longer than it did in my case. And this follows into a subject of how a battery can fail. Now, caveat with this that I am not using any documentation or citations in front of me to back up what I'm saying, but this makes logical sense, and please, I have a lot of really smart people in the audience. Correct me where I'm wrong so that I can be less wrong and I can, you know, pin the comment to show the more accurate information. But this is a case of cycle life rather than cell degradation. But in what I've noticed, because my cell degradation, my cell capacity, pack capacity, has been pretty good, still above 80%. But with the rapid amount of supercharging and the quantity of it, I ran to the deadline of cycle life count. You know, there's only so many times that a battery can cycle through charged to depleted. And maybe again, loosely basing it on a biological analogy with one's heart, you can have a really good heart that pumps blood really efficiently, but typically you still view that there is a finite amount of beats that heart is gonna take over its lifetime. The more efficient, you know, the longer that goes. But that's getting off topic. When it comes to the battery, I filled it and depleted it so quickly that the cycle life limit is what seems to be reached long before, you know, really bad cell degradation. I did a lot of measurements while I was up in Eugene and even just kind of around looking at my watt hours per mile, and it was showing that, you know, in perfect conditions, I could get up to about 85 to 88% of my original capacity, but typically with all the hills and having passengers, my capacity was down, you know, closer to the high 70s, you know, 79 to 81%. And that's just because typically I'm carrying more mass than the average person, which also means my vehicle's working harder. I saw that too, that my charging expenditure didn't make a whole lot of sense given, you know, what the person could pull up with watt hours per mile and everything. But I will handle that in the total cost video. I think you guys will find that to be really exciting. But getting back on topic here with the most common questions, warranties came up a lot. So my vehicle, and I don't know if there's a lot of variety in Tesla's warranties, to be honest, but I know for me, for the Model 3 Standard Range Plus, I had an 8-year or 120,000 mile guarantee. That's an either or, so that's how warranties work. Whichever one you hit first destroys the warranty. Typically you hear like a 50,000 mile, 4-year warranty, whatever. Yeah, it's either or. And in this case, I passed that 120K well before the 8 years. So yeah, it's coming out of pocket. It is what it is. I addressed that I knew that that was coming in the last video, but it is good for everyone to know their actual warranties. If you're not sure, ask. Ask Tesla. Just look it up. Just find out. That way you know and you can better prepare. Attached to the warranty question came a lot of questions around third-party repair or having somebody else, maybe repair some of the cells for cheaper, or me even keeping the pack to have it repaired when I get the new battery, like a core deposit when you take a battery back to AutoZone or something. Now, there's a few points here. When it comes to third-party repair, where I'm not going to say that it isn't good or you shouldn't do it, my thoughts on this are that I know I'm going to be using the hell out of this vehicle, and I want the right people working on this. Now, I come from a background of general service mechanics. I've worked in the auto industry as a general service mechanic myself, and now I am a service technician mechanic with a fancier name attached to it. So I see all the time, yeah, just take it here and have this person do it, it's cool, whatever. It's really easy to suggest something like that, but the caveats that come with it, with, let's say, a couple of the cells are repaired, the next day some other cells go bad, and I'm still stuck in a bad situation. Or something happens with whoever it is, and there isn't a good guarantee or a good warranty to back up the work. In my life, I have realized that I am unfortunately best friends with Murphy's Law. If you don't know, look it up. Typically, if it can happen to me, it will. And I showed you a good example of that in the last video when looking at the fact that I had a bolt in my tire the same week that my battery died while it was pouring down rain. Whatever. What was me? Yeah. But with my bad luck, if I don't get this done right, it is absolutely going to come back to bite me in the butt. And I'm not going to deal with that. Neither am I going to deal with lugging around a battery and figuring out where to store it, how to sell it, whatever. In this case, it makes a lot more sense to let Tesla handle this, have the warranty on the new battery with the upgraded battery, and then they can do what they will with the old one. I do want to ask questions about whether or not they'll be able to use it for testing, kind of like the whole organ donor analogy that a lot of you loved, to see, how a heavy-use transportation as a service industry affects batteries now and how they can improve them for later. But when it comes to the third-party repair thing, I'm not going to tell you not to do it, but the amount of due diligence you need to do on who you're taking it to, the guarantees around it, the turnaround time, and just the risk you take with replacing individual cells when it's likely that if one's bad, many are bad. It goes with the same thing when you're replacing one tire. You might as well replace at least a pair, never just one or even all four, because they're all going to be around the same vein. Or if you get, one CV axle goes out on the left side of the car, that right one's probably following it pretty soon behind it. You don't just replace one, just replace them both. Things get, replaced in conjunction when it comes to machinery all the time, because if one thing's wearing out, that's an indicator that several other things are wearing out. And on that topic, I got a lot of really funny comments about how for the price of the new battery, I could have gotten, you name it, ICE vehicle for $13,000 or less. It's rather comical to hear. It's like, yeah, I could buy a lot of things for $13,000. That's irrelevant. That doesn't make any sense. Why would I waste my money on a used Toyota Corolla, as one person commented, when I can replace the battery in my otherwise perfectly working Model 3 and keep on rolling? I mean, again, in the automotive industry, when you buy used, you're inheriting all the problems that may or may not come with that vehicle. As good as someone says it is, I mean, yeah, I could rant on this forever. Point being that, the best option for me and for us, when we think about these things, is to let Tesla handle it and have the new warranty, get back on the road knowing that I've got a new and improved battery. They did say it's improved, not sure how. I do plan to run tests on actual range, like real world range versus predicted range or expected range. The last thing I wanted to touch on real quick was going over, there's been a lot of comparison, I should say, in the comments between my car's battery failing at around 140,000 miles, 225,000 kilometers versus what you would pay in maintenance for an ICE vehicle. Now, as incredibly convoluted as that is when you consider the myriad of different makes, models, years, circumstances, it gets really hard to narrow that down to a proper niche that's an apples-to-apples comparison for maintenance. And I don't really think there's an argument to be made that it is even an apples-to-apples comparison, given the completely different structures of an EV and an ICE vehicle. But I would see comments around, getting a new motor, parts and labor for $2,000 versus a $13,000 battery. That's a really easy thing to say, and it kind of goes back into taking your chance at third-party repair. You might have Uncle Bob that can swap out your motor for nothing but the cost of labor. Uncle Bob forgot to torque down a bolt connected to your pistons or the camshaft, or didn't properly line up the shims in your differential, and yeah, that just turned into a much more expensive repair. You know, risk is an important thing to factor in here, as well as the fact that not all cars are created equal. My buddy recently, poor guy, had to replace his transaxle in a new Kia Forte that was, you know, at the time under warranty, and that was $4,000 that he would have had to pay. Well, a little bit later, out of warranty, his motor went out in his Kia Forte, and he had to pay almost $9,000. Now, you can say that's because of dealership, whatever. Point is, you know, it can be $2,000 for a shady job that might break again, because, I mean, dude, anybody replacing for parts and labor a full motor for $2K, depending on the car, I'd be questioning how reliable that repair is going to be. I mean, you get what you pay for. Sorry. And then, truth be told, in the automotive industry, if you're getting the work done right with good parts by a reputable ASE certified mechanic, it's not going to be cheap. That's just the way it is. I mean, some people get lucky. You know, that happens. Kind of like people who buy a used tire and, you know, it had a few patches in it. Somehow it's holding air. I'm not taking that kind of a risk. But ultimately, it boils down to that when you consider all the different circumstances that people go through, because I saw two sides to this argument. Some showing about their car at 140,000 having way more problems than my single issue with the battery, and other people saying, you know, they've got a car that, you know, will go a million miles and never break a day in their life. You know, anecdotal comments that you take with a grain of salt. These are good conversations to have, but in my use case, it really comes down to the fact that the only thing wrong with my car is the battery. That's all we're paying for. We're going to be done, and it's going to be back on the road. And there's no concern that there are subsequent parts attached to that battery that are about to fail, like one would expect in an ICE vehicle when you look at an internal combustion engine. It's not uncommon in the auto industry, in the ICE industry, that when one thing starts to break, you start to get a sequence of issues that follow behind it. And in my case, it's a singular issue. And it's basically a replace and resume my life, and I'm back on the road, and everything else is fine. So all in all, I'm feeling really good about what's going on, and I loved all the comments and feedback, questions and inquiry, everything. It was really great. Some of it was fun. Some of it was just fun to read for some comic relief, and I loved all the comments, you know, giving best wishes to Mew in his time of need, and everyone appreciates my objective, upfront approach to these sorts of things. I'm interested in giving you guys good, reliable information, being credible myself as a source, and maintaining that type of reputation. So that's what you can expect from me. I'm gonna give it to you straight, and when I'm wrong, I'll admit so. When I'm right, well, that enough said. But thanks again, everybody. Keep your eyes out for the true cost of ownership video that'll be coming. Maybe an entertaining video about more ridiculous comments that I got. Let me know what you think again, and I'm gonna try to keep some of this flowing while we wait patiently for you to get back on the road. Thanks again, everyone. Take care.